Hi everyone, my name is Islam Nassar, and today I will present our work LAVA, short for Label Efficient Visual Learning and Adaptation. This work is in collaboration of my colleagues Munawar, Ihsan, Hamid, Mirtash, and Reza Hafari from Monash University and University of Adelaide as well. So LAVA is a method for visual transfer learning with limited labels, or under the condition of having very few labels in the target data set. So the task essentially is that we're trying to transfer a model which is pre-trained on a source data set such as ImageNet, where we have access to the entire labels, to a target data set but with only few labeled instances and potentially some unlabeled instances as well. And we tackle different scenarios in terms of class overlap and domain overlap. So we tackle the scenario where we have partial class overlap or no class overlap or at all or full class overlap. And similarly, in terms of visual domain, we tackle scenarios where we move from natural images, for example, such as ImageNet, to cartoons or clip arts or sketches, or just remaining in the natural images as we are. So the first thing we tried is to just try the mainstream method, which is basically do source pre-training on the ImageNet dataset and do supervised fine-tuning on the few labeled instances we have. However, this approach, which is supervised pre-training, is always suffering from what is called supervision collapse. And in a nutshell, supervision collapse means that the model only learns information which are relevant to identify the source classes, because we train in a supervised manner. So it only learns the relevant information to identify those classes, and it discards any other information, even if it's essential or even if it's important to transferring to a new set of classes or to a new domain, so to speak. So this supervision collapse kind of exhibits two different behaviors, what we call class collapse and what we call domain collapse. Class collapse is when it loses focus of the class semantics. So for example, if you pass it this Mona Lisa image, it will retrieve back much smaller, like different images than Mona Lisa, just because these share superficial patterns with the Mona Lisa graph, whereas what we actually hope that the model will retrieve is the actual Mona Lisa images in the cartoon visual domain. So this is what is called class collapse, and similarly the domain collapse, where in that case, this image of a burger will retrieve burgers, but instead of in the clip art domain, it will be in the natural image domain where the supervised model has been pre-trained. So those two phenomena can be addressed or are addressed in our solution LAVA by actually threefold solution. So the first step is that we do self-supervised pre-training instead of the supervised pre-training. And the self-supervised pre-training, because it does not use classes while training, it kind of uses an auxiliary task that is not class dependent. So it was shown to learn much more generic features or representations that transfers well across domain and also across classes. So that was the first part of our solution. The second part of our solution is to also inject semantics into the model. So by semantics, I mean that when you are training the model, instead of using meaningless class labels, which is basically the mainstream or the common thing that is usually done, is to encode those class labels using numbers or integers like zeros and ones and so on. And this has the side effect of ignoring any semantic relationship between the class labels. So essentially, a cat and a tiger are completely orthogonal in this space because each one of them is represented with an integer. But when in reality we know that cats and tigers shares a lot of similarities and so on. So to kind of alleviate this problem, we use, instead of using integers as representation for the labels, we actually use a language embedding of the class label as a target for the supervision. So in this sense, for example, to supervise this image, we use a pre-trained language model. We encode plain, which is the class label, into a semantic space that kind of represent language. And then we learn on top of this semantic space a mapper or an adapter module that encodes the visual features into the same semantic space. So in other words, we're trying to align the language model space to the visual model space. And this has like a very or provide a very good advantage, especially when you are transferring to new set of classes, like when you have partial or no class overlap, because you are essentially moving to a different set of classes. So in that case, you can make use of language similarity to say something or infer something about visual similarity as well. So that's the second component of our solution Lava. And finally, the last component is what we refer to as multi-crop pseudo-labeling. And this is basically to leverage the unlabeled data in the target domain. So as I started by saying, we use few labeled instances, but we also have access sometimes, in one of the scenarios that we consider anyways, to unlabeled data as well. So to make use of this unlabeled data, we leverage pseudo-labeling, which is essentially letting the model produce labels on this unlabeled set, and then picking those with high confidence as true labels to retrain the model. So essentially extending our training data set or expanding our training data set. However, different from the common pseudo-labeling methods, we use a multi-crop approach. So instead of obtaining pseudo-labels based on only one single view of the image, we crop the image into multiple views. That's a hyperparameter that we can set, but we use 10 for our purposes. So we have 10 different views of the image, small resolution, large resolution, medium resolution, and also with some special augmentations on top of them. And then when we are obtaining a pseudo-label to train the model with, we pool or average the pseudo-label of the model for each and every pair of images that the student model see and the teacher model see. So we use the student-teacher setup, such as some of the recent methods for pseudo-labeling as well. So we adopt a similar approach. However, the difference, or the thing that we kind of adopt, is the fact of multi-crop pseudo-labeling to enhance the robustness of the pseudo-label and obtain a more accurate one. So combining all those together give us Lava, which is a method or a recipe of training, leveraging those components to achieve this few-shot transfer. And remarkably, it achieves very, very good results, exceeds state-of-the-art by actually a couple of percentage in different domains and in different data sets. So I'm not going to cover the results in detail. You can look at the paper to see it. But we try to cover different scenarios with partial class overlaps from one domain to another domain, from the one domain to the same domain, such as like ImageNet to ImageNet, for example. And we also have few-shot classification as opposed to semi-supervised. So we also simulate the scenario where we actually have an entirely new set of classes in the target domain. And in all different cases, we achieve state-of-the-art or near state-of-the-art results. So I hope you read the paper and enjoy it. Thank you.